welcome to Straight Shooting with Dan and Joseph. Tune into this podcast to get the latest news on competitive shooting events and to learn how to become a better shooter. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and be sure to recommend it to all of your shooting friends. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Straight Shooting with Dan and Joseph. We've got Blake Liles back with us from 415 Training. Thank you for coming out again, Blake.
Thank you for having me back.
You bet. And looking forward to talking with Blake. Today, primarily on our show, we're going to be talking a lot about cleaning and maintenance. Give you kind of a preview of what we're all going to be doing. We've got a few score updates. There are a few matches going on. We'll talk a little bit about that. We've got the Straight Shooting Challenge. Joseph and I went out and tried to shoot in a CD and DVD. Tried to shoot through the center hole, the hole in the middle with our 22 pistols. And
I think it was harder than if we used a large caliber, because I don't know.
It was difficult, but it was fun. And we've got videos going to go up there on our YouTube channel. We challenge you to do the same thing. Put your videos up there. We want to see them and see how you did with that. Then we're going to go over cleaning of your rimfire barrel. We get those questions a lot from the Eley customer range, test range, on how often do I clean, how do I clean, how do y'all clean when testing. We'll go over that. Then we'll finish up with bleeding off with Joseph, where Blake and Joseph are going to talk about what maintenance you're going to do on your open gun. There's a few things there. And then we're going to go into some new drills and talking about the 4 for core. So let's get started. All right, on the match updates, we had our 50-50 got their sporter and indoor 3-gun. That's our 50-50 doing rimfire bench rest. They call it 50-50 because they do 50 yards and 50 meters. So they had their 3-gun. They call it 3-gun because they shoot a sporter, 10.5 pound, and a 13.5 pound gun. And they did it at yards. Keith Royal was in third. Daniel Smith was second. Mark Mankin was the overall winner. And then they did it again in meters. And Mark Mankin was third. Keith Royal was second. And Jason Freimeyer was the winner. In the sporter side of things, they had the national indoor national tournament for that as well. Yards, third place, Sharon Piccarelli. Second, Jason Freimeyer. And the winner was Keith Royal. And at meters, you had Bruce Hornstein in third, Keith Royal in second, and Jason Freimeyer in first. And that was in Luray, Virginia, back a 3 weeks ago. And congratulations to those guys. ARA, American Rimfire Association, had some unlimited 22 bench rest competitions finishing up the indoor season. Got it in just in the nick of time. At Chickenfoot in Cedartown, Georgia. They had the Georgia State tournament. Tim Martin was in third, Bob Cleveland was second, and William Casey won that one. And they had the indoor club tournament as well the next day, I believe. Greg Monroe was third, Lamar Gaddis was second, and Bob Cleveland was the winner. And that wrapped up our ARA indoor season. That runs from October 1st to the end of March. So we have 2 big national championships that are awarded on that. One is called A-line, and one is called your aggregate. So your high aggregate or your average target. Got to shoot at least 20 targets to qualify. I can't go shoot one round and then have real good and call it good. But these guys all shot quite a few targets. Mike Lowe was finished third with 93 targets total. Had a 23-19 ag. That's out of a possible 2,500. So anything over 2,300 is pretty smoking. And he was at 23-19 in third. Chuck Morrell was second with 47 targets and a 23-51. And then the winner, Tom Wilkinson, 53 targets with a 23-77 aggregate. So really good shooting there by those guys. The A-line is more about how many targets you can get in and how good you do in those matches. The bigger the matches you go, the more points you earn. And so basically, these guys go to nothing but tournaments and travel around and try to go to the bigger tournaments so that they can earn more points. Ag also gets into there. There's several different things, but the primary things are your ag and how well you finish at those bigger matches.
Is that just because you said the bigger matches you get more points? Is that just because they have more targets?
Because they have more people.
Okay.
So the way they do points in ARA, if it's a 6-target match, and you have 10 people show up, then it's 10 times 6. Winner gets 60 points. Second place gets 54. However, how many targets that's what you subtract from.
But
so
if 100
60,
people
then 54.
show up, then
Yeah, but if
Yeah.
it's 100 people, and then if it's a tournament, so each club can have 2 tournaments a year, and on a tournament you're double points. So that's what they do. They don't go to the normal club matches, your monthly matches. They go travel around and hit the tournaments that everybody. And typically, what a club will do is they'll have one weekend where they'll have a double tournament. They'll have one on Saturday, one on Sunday, and so they'll travel there and be able to hit double points. And you want to go to the big one because, like I say, if you had 100 people there, that'd be 600 because it'd be 6 targets. So it'd be 600. Yeah. Well, it's double points, so that means 1,200. So the winner would get 1,200 points as opposed to a 10-person.
Right.
Where you're going to get 120. So got to do good and got to do well against a bunch of people. And Bill Drummond ended up third on that. Bob Cleveland was second. And to kind of give you an idea, Bob Cleveland did 196 targets. And so that's,
But he shoots them pretty good, too. Like, he does pretty
well. He was 2306 was his ag. So he still agged over 2,300 over 196 targets. And Jerry Smith had 202 targets and a 2310 ag. So he had 6 more targets. So he got one more event in than Bob did, and had a little bit better ag as well. So congratulations, Jerry Smith there out of Minden, Louisiana. He's right there with Mikulek. Jerry Mikulek, right there. They, matter of fact, the way Jerry and Eddie, guy he shoots with a lot there, got started doing some ABRA, Auto Bench Rest Association, at Mikulek's range there.
Okay. Wow.
And so a little bit of crossover there. So congratulations to those guys. Tune in to the American Rimfire Association, and we'll be going over announcing all those winners and giving their Hall of Fame points and everything. And that did wrap it up for the indoor season. Now we'll move right along to our straight shooting challenge. Okay. So Joseph, what did you do?
This one was hard. I thought it was gonna be easy, and it wasn't easy at all.
So we took tape.
Yeah.
We
had a backer, like just a white piece of cardboard basically, and we had 4 discs, like just blank, like those old burned CDs, and they weren't touching, but they were, pretty close together. They might have been like an inch apart, and we were, I think, 7 or 10 yards?
I think we tried it at 10, and then we wound up we cheated up a little bit to 7.
Because we couldn't hit it. We couldn't do it without hitting
with a pistol. Iron sights.
Yeah.
No,
well, we have to.
They're Caspian Taxol, like they're built 22 pistol. It looks just like an open gun.
Gotcha.
But it's chambered in 22, and they're super accurate, but that's a small freaking target to hit, and I didn't hit it at all. I say hit it, I didn't clear the ring without touching the disc. He had one, and I didn't have any. I had one.
Won. I declared champion.
Yeah, he won that one. He finally won one.
That's right.
Take it and run with it, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's a super easy challenge to do. I would encourage anybody to do it just to see if you can accomplish it, because it's pretty difficult, especially at a farther. Even if you cut that distance down like a foot or 2, it'd still be pretty difficult, especially if we had a dot in that MOA. It's covered up that whole the whole target. But it was difficult. Yeah, you won that one.
That's good. I'll take it.
And we were shooting force on that.
Yeah, using the Eley Force. High velocity run real good in those 22 or not. It's basically a 1911 conversion.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they're fun. I like using that because it does feel very similar to my open gun we use in USPSA. Not near the recoil, of course, and not near the hole size. The 2.2 hole size is a little bit smaller than the 38, but
because that was the issue. I'm glad we weren't doing, which the drill we did before that was that bill drill, and we were using those same pistols, and it doesn't sit the same as like our 38 open.
Right.
because it's a lot smaller. And so your clearance on the holster, like I can barely get my thumb in between my belt and the grip. And so that is a little sketchy, because then you for sure can't reach the safety. And so you have to, like, I'm almost like half draw before I can even contact the safety. It's a little different, but it's really good practice because it does feel very similar to our Super Comp gun.
And the other thing, I like doing it with that too, because I have some Ruger Mark IIIs that we do, and that angle on that grip is different. So when I go to grab my sight, it's taken me forever to try to get that habit out of me because I've aimed wrong. And then if I go and shoot that, well, then I'm all back over. So I'm basically, I guess I need to sell my Mark III because Mark IX was a very good gun. I like the gun. It's just different, and
it's a different setup.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like shooting between a Glock and then a 1911 base gun, because those grip angles are different.
And it definitely throws you off there. So anyway, get on there on our YouTube channel, Straight Shooting with Dan and Joseph. Search for that on YouTube. We got that posted up. Reply back there, or get on Kello Shooting Sports Facebook page, and let's see your video of you shooting through the DVD, and then we'll have something else to do here again in 2 more weeks. All right, moving along to Precision Shots, brought to you by KelloShootingSports.com, your one-stop shop for competition shooting needs. We are open, shipping out every day, so if you need some ammo, 2.2 ammo, 38 Super Comp, we've got it. Still have some in stock. We got a bunch of orders coming in, but we are able, from our Texas warehouse, to still get orders out the same day if you order before 2 o'clock Central Time. So be happy to get you some ammo out. Hopefully during this COVID-19 madness that you can still get out and practice a little bit. Feel for all our folks that are in the cities and are kind of tied up to where they can't get out. Sure makes me proud to be a country boy where I can go out in the backyard and still not leave home, but I can go out and shoot a little bit. So anyway, if you need anything, get us KelloShootingSports.com. All right, today we're going to talk about cleaning your barrel. And this specifically we're talking about on our competition 22 rifles through the Eley customer range, which Joseph runs for us now. Is we test a lot of 3-position rifles, a lot of bench rest rifles, and the 3-position crowd, quite honestly, is notorious for not ever clean. And there's a whole bunch of crowd out there that they never, maybe once a year. Now they'll oil down and do various things to, on the outside, put a little bolt grease on the bolt, and maybe flush the trigger out with some Roncinol lighter fluid or something, naphtha. But as far as putting anything down the barrel, most of those people do not do that at all. And then if they do, they swear it takes 500 rounds to get back to normal.
To foul it back.
But that has not been our experience. And one thing that's been really good about with the customer range, and this is by design by the Eley engineers, is all those guns are tested exactly the same. And that's in every Eley range that they have. And they have kept every shot that's ever been put down range. So there's no telling how much data they've got. And being engineers, they're meticulous about going through it and everything. And basically they've come back and said, short answer is they shoot better clean. So what is clean? So what we do, we try to do it about every 100 shots, give or take a few. And every barrel is different. Some can go longer than that. But I really haven't seen any that can't go that long. Most of them can go at least 100 shots. And I've got friends that do it, and they'll do 200 or 300, and perhaps they've known that on their barrel and they've tested it. My problem is when I've tried to do that, you don't know when it's going to fall off. And half the time it's going to be in the middle of a target that you're on, and that's the last thing you want to do is too late. But I know what it does when it's clean. So if I'm in a competition, I clean it after every target.
Which is only 25, 30 rounds.
Well,
maybe 50,
50, yeah, it's 50 for me because there's 25 record bulls, but I foul at 5, so I always foul 5 because invariably if you've cleaned it well, the very first shot's going to fly. And typically for a gun, it will fly to the same place just about every time. Mine typically flies high right about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. And then after that, they'll start coming in and they'll settle down. And 5 usually is plenty. I've never seen one take more than 10 to really just start.
So some of them it may take more than 5, but it won't take like 20.
Right. Yeah, I'd say 10 max, 5 minimum on that. And we watch that too at the Eley customer range, and that's what we'll do. Now, if you send your gun down to test at the customer range and you have a specific cleaning protocol, I mean, we're happy to follow and do what you normally do.
Most people just want to know what we do, but if you do something, I'll always ask somebody, hey, if you do something different that you want me to follow with this rifle, just let me know what it is, and I'll do that.
Right.
If not, but usually they just say no, whatever y'all recommend or whatever you do.
Okay.
And then after that, they do whatever.
Yeah, they do what they want to do. So the other kind of mainstay that we do is going to have a bore guide. So you're going to have a bore guide. You're going to take the bolt out. You're going to slide the bore guide in, and the bore guide is designed to just guide the cleaning rod as it goes down the barrel, because you'll always hear that more barrels are ruined from poor cleaning than they are actually being shot out. And what they mean by poor cleaning is they've scratched the barrel by pushing the rod down there and going all the way down over, put a scratch on the barrel as the rod went down the bore. So to make sure you're not doing that, use the bore guide. Use the guides that are tight on the rod so that there's not any slop in it, and then watch that go down the barrel. The bore guides we make and sell, they do not go all the way flush up against the end of the barrel, against the chamber. And we do that on purpose because we want to see it go in the barrel and watch it. Because if you start pushing on that and you start pushing that rod, you bow it, and you're going to get it going over to the side and scraping on that barrel.
And you can see it. So if this is the opening of your chamber and here's your rod, if you're bowing down, it's going to bend up.
Yeah.
Well, then you can see once, because it's right above where it feeds in through the action, you can see it'll contact the top. Or if you push up on it, it'll contact the bottom. Same with your left and right. It's whatever way you're pushing it, it's going to bend the opposite direction coming out of the guide.
Yep.
Whatever it does before then doesn't really matter. What happens after does matter, because that's where you're going to contact the barrel.
So anytime we're at a match, I always watch people do it, and I just cringe sometimes because so many of them, they got that rod, and they don't realize they're bending that rod up. They're trying to be straight. So anyway, try to keep the rod straight so it goes down the center of the barrel. The other thing we do, we typically use stainless steel rods. And the reason we use stainless steel rods is because they're harder, and they won't, when you do bend them, they snap back straight. The softer metals and some of the coated rods that are real popular, if you bend that thing enough, it's finally going to get to where it has a bow in it. These other ones are straight, and as long as you keep it down the center of the barrel, it really doesn't matter what you use because it's not touching the barrel. The other thing we'll do is Jerry Stiller with the Whole Shot Arms has made some cleaning rods for us, and he's melanited the cleaning rods. And so that's just another layer of protection just in case the rod does hit the barrel, that it's not going to scratch on that.
Keeps it really smooth.
Keeps it smooth. Keep that rod clean. One thing, one reason why some people don't like using a coated rod is if you're leaning that, a lot of times while we're cleaning, we'll lean that up against the bench we're on, and those are usually concrete benches. If you get any of that concrete or any loose gravel or anything on the side of that rod, I mean, that's just, now it's sandpaper. So make sure you're wiping those things off, keeping them clean, so if it does come into contact with the barrel, it's less likely to scratch it or to do anything. So typically I'll push my cleaning rod through the bore guide. I can see it before it goes in the barrel, and I'll lay my patch right there against the muzzle, and I just run my jag into the middle of that patch, and I push it down the barrel. The first thing you're going to want to do is just get a wet patch and push it one time down through the barrel to remove all the debris, because if you've ever looked down a dirty barrel, there's all kinds of unburnt powder and primer and all kinds of junk down in there. You want to get that stuff out as quick as you can. So we push one patch, push all of that out, and then we want to take care of the combustion ring. The combustion ring is formed just in front of the lead of the chamber, and it happens when the round fires. Right where the bullet leaves the brass, that's where all the gases are coming out that are the hottest. and it'll form a little ring right around there. And you can see it with a bore scope, and if it gets bad enough, you can feel it when you push the bullet in, or the live round in. That will form a ring, and every time you're loading one of these lead bullets into there, you're pushing that bullet through that. So that will definitely hurt your accuracy, and you want to clean that out and make sure that you're getting that out of there. I've seen them bad enough, because anytime we load, we're doing single shot guns here. Anytime we load, we push that round in with our thumb to make sure it goes in nice and straight, and then close the bolt. And I've seen them bad enough to where you could feel it, and you're like, man, what, this bullet's too big. Well, no, it's not the bullet's too big. You're pushing it through a smaller hole. And so that's, now you're reconfiguring the way the bullet looks. Now, to get that out, if you haven't been cleaning and doing this already, the first time you get that out, it's probably going to take a little bit because it's built up for so long. If you do it every single time you clean, it's not that big a deal. So to get that out the first time, you're probably going to need to use IOSO or JB Boreshine or some type of polish on the end of a patch, and just short stroke that area there, because you just need, it's
like
just
extremely short,
right,
like an inch maybe,
yes,
into the barrel, because we use, it's a bigger brush.
Yeah, well, it's a 22 cal nylon brush is what we use on a regular basis. If you do that on a regular basis, we've bore scoped it, and a nylon brush will get it out. And I know a lot of people are scared to do other things, thinking they're going to damage the barrel. The nylon brush is not going to hurt your barrel. I don't think a bronze brush will, but there are a lot of people that don't like to do a bronze brush. So if you don't want to do a bronze brush, just do a nylon. If you do it every time you clean, every 100 rounds, it'll come out in about 10 strokes. Yeah. We just real quick with a pistol rod. I use a short rod, and just right there 10 times, a couple inches in there. Because with a nylon brush, it's not going to hurt if you go too far, but there's no sense in doing the whole barrel, and get that out. Like I say, first time you do it, you're probably going to have to use some JB Boreshine or IOSO, or really get after it with a bronze brush and just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. I don't like using IOSO or JB Boreshine all the time, because that is a polish, and with a polish, you are changing the dimensions in there ever so slightly. I mean, if you're just doing that on a very rare occasions, you're not going to do anything. But I've seen people who do that every single time they clean. If you do it every time you target you shoot, and you're like Jerry Smith there, and you shot 200 targets, and you did it on all 200 targets in a matter of 6 months, you're going to be changing the internal dimensions in there ever so slowly. But it is okay to do occasionally and get that cleaned out of there. Then so we push, all right, so to start with, we push one wet patch, get everything out, come in with the nylon brush, 10 short strokes there, and then I'll typically push 2 or 3 more wet patches down, and then just start pushing dry patches until they come out clean. And usually, if you're doing this all the time, it's usually another 2, 3 dry patches, and you're good to go. That's all there is to it. Now, I said wet patch, but I didn't say what I put on that wet to make it wet. So what we use is Pro Shot One Step. Pro Shot One Step works really well. There's plenty of other stuff out there. It's good. That's just what we have experience with, that, and we know works well. The Pro Shot One Step Vortec Rimfire blend, I know works well too. I have used that in the past. Works really well, and have no problems with anybody using that. It's a Rimfire blend. There's a couple of other Rimfire blends out there that'll be fine, because one thing about it, Rimfire is going to be different than the centerfire, because all we're dealing with is lead and carbon, and we're a lot lower pressure. So centerfire, much higher pressure, much higher heat. You got copper jacketed bullets. So I mean, it's a whole different animal. But for 22, it's not that difficult. So any one of those will work. I'm sure most of the centerfire stuff will work and get that out as well, but you don't need anything, expressly for copper, because there's not any copper in there.
Yeah.
There is another one. If you hadn't done it in a while, there is some lead out that's good. because we do have some lead bullets all the time. The other one I've seen quite a few people use, they make their own little homemade concoction of Kroll and either Hoppies or Shooter's Choice. And Kroll's just a good penetrating oil, will get in underneath everything. And I've never used that personally, but I know a lot of really good shooters that do use that, and they're doing quite well with it. So I would not be scared to do that. And then I always love Hoppies. I always
The baseline.
Yeah, Hoppies is just, I just love the way it smells. Did you ever see that NASCAR commercial where the gal's getting ready to go out on a date with a NASCAR driver, so she takes racing fuel and she puts it on like perfume and puts it on? So that's what I told my wife. I said, if you'll do that with Hoppies, that would be perfect right there for me. I don't need none of that highfalutin perfume or anything. A little bit of Hoppies there behind your ear and on your wrist.
Just a drop or two, and we're good.
Yeah.
That's right. I just love the way that stuff smells. But anyway, so that's what we do for our barrels and keeping those things clean. 100 rounds, 1 wet patch, 10 strokes with a nylon brush, short stroking with a short pistol rod, and then 2 or 3 wet patches, and then 3 to 4 dry patches till it's clean. Make sure you use the bore guide to keep the rod down the center of the barrel. Make sure you're not going to do anything else on there, rubbing that rod against the barrel to do any kind of damage. The only other thing I will do, typically just about every match, I'll use some Roncinol. I never can say that right. Roncinol, which that's the
It's
yellow
like
bottle.
lighter fluid.
It's lighter. It is lighter fluid. It's like you would put in your Zippo lighter. Ronsonol, Roncinol.
Yep.
It's in a yellow thing. It has naphtha in it. So a lot of the painters and whatnot may have some naphtha, because I think that's also
Paint thinner.
paint thinner.
Yeah.
And this is what Jewel triggers. This is what they recommend. Is kind of where I got it from. So remove your bolt from your gun when you're looking at our gun. Then you can see the top of the trigger sitting down in there. Just squirt some down in through, and it just let it go from the top to the bottom and just flush it out. And that's all it does, is it gets all the dust and everything out of there. It's also going to get all the grease and everything out, because you do not want grease or oil inside that trigger. Too many little intricate parts, and oil's going to attract dust, and you're going to have problems. So
Plus it evaporates in like
yes,
no time
the
at all.
Roncinol evaporates, it goes out, and squirt that down through there. That'll flush it out. If one's acting up, if you'll flush it through there real good with that, let that come through the bottom, it'll land on your trigger guard, but in just a couple of minutes it'll be evaporated and gone. And that's all you need to do to your trigger. Do that. That's coming from several trigger manufacturers' recommendations. That's what we've done over the years and found that it works extremely well. Don't put any oil or any lube or anything in the trigger. Do not want to do that. Stay away from that. And that's pretty well the gist of it on the cleaning. And it's not, like I say, as long as you do it on a regular basis, it's not that big of a deal.
And if you have, since we were talking about tuners the other day, if you have a tuner on your barrel, you don't have to take it off when you clean. You can if you want to, but there are ways to clean the tuner without taking it off your barrel. We've got tuner cleaners where you just run a patch on the end of the barrel. It'll clean the tip of the barrel where it butts up against the tuner. It will build up on the end there. And the idea behind that, so you're trying to tune the barrel, you're trying to tune the harmonics with weight. If you've got a lot of buildup in that tuner on the end of that barrel, it is very small. It's like micro weight, but it is weight that's added. And so if it gets too much, could potentially cause a problem, or it will cause a problem once it gets built up too much. So you can add that into your cleaning regimen. Your competition cleaning is going to be way more frequent than just when any other time you would do it, because, obviously we recommend every 100, 120, 130 rounds. That has a little bit of a window there. But at the same time, if we're shooting a match, every 45, 50 rounds, we're still cleaning. And the idea behind that is because you want to control every aspect that you can, because you want to know exactly what your rifle's doing. If you don't do something, or if you don't have the results that you are looking for, you don't want it to be because you changed something or you didn't do something that you normally do. And that's kind of how I see it. Like,
Yep.
if I drop a card, I don't want it to be because I didn't clean between the last one. Like, I want to know why I dropped it. It's usually because of the wind, but I don't want it to be because of something that I did or didn't do.
Exactly. So what he was talking about there, tuner cleaner, runs that up in there. We use a 3-inch shotgun patch. Typically, I don't even put anything on the end of it. You're just getting unburnt powder out of there is all you got to do. It's nothing real fancy. And just put it in there a couple twists, bring it out, and I typically do that between every target as well, just to make sure, like he says, we're not getting any extra weight. And that's it. That's all we're going to do. Put a little grease on your bolt, on the lugs, anywhere it's going to come in contact, and don't even have to do that often. Typically, I do that once a match, perhaps at the end, unless I feel it getting tighter as I close the bolt. But that's about it on the maintenance on those.
Yeah.
All right, very good. All right, moving on to bleeding off with Joseph. So Joseph's got Blake Liles in here today from 415 Training, and talk a little bit more about what we do on the USPSA side.
Yeah. And so, just since we're talking about cleaning, what is your cleaning regimen for a pistol?
So shooting open and shooting Infinity right now, which are really tightly fit guns. If I don't manage those guns, they will simply stop running.
Right. It's like a Ferrari, essentially.
Really
I mean, it's a higher quality gun with higher maintenance standards.
And not that, and it's not the maintenance standards, just the fact that the fit on Infinities are just there's no tolerances. They're just so tightly.
Well,
fit.
I would classify open guns in general as, I mean, it's not a Glock or a Beretta where you can run 20,000 rounds.
A lot of guys, like I used to shoot with a guy, and he prided himself on the fact that he'd never cleaned a pistol. It was a Glock 34, never cleaned it, still ran. Wouldn't get away with that on. But coming from like shooting Atlas, when I did before, even the tolerances on that, which was a good pistol, I know it would go a lot longer than the SV will. I know that. So for me, 300-400 rounds, just a breakdown of the top end, barrel, inside the lugs, feed ramp, and then maybe every other 400 rounds, every other cleaning, pull the firing mechanisms out, the sear and the disconnect and all that good stuff, and give it a good complete cleaning. And then maybe every 3,000, 4,000 rounds, grip comes off, and then everything gets cleaned out. Yeah.
Just a good deep.
We were talking before we went on air. I was talking about Nationals last year, and the very first stage of Nationals, I zeroed because I cleaned the pistol before I headed up to Utah, but I didn't pull the grip off, and apparently in the cleaning process, I pushed a little bit of dirt, grit, something down into the channel for my trigger bow, and the trigger wouldn't reset. And it's fortunately is a low round count stage, but I never recovered from that. It got in my head, but that was totally poor maintenance on my part.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of what happened to me the last match I shot. The match that I went to there in Austin, it wasn't poor maintenance because I was cleaning it, fairly often. I was just using the wrong products because I was trying to use like the same things that we use on our rifles because I thought, heck yeah, if we use this, it'll work for this. It's essentially the same mechanism.
Essentially.
You need something to clean it, something to lubricate it. Here you go. Well, it was cold that morning, and the lube I was using was just a little too thick, and it just gummed that thing up. And it was a qualifier stage, and I shot that thing bolt action the whole time. It was a really short stage. I don't remember the name of the it was a 2-stage, 1-stage deal where like it's one stage, but you have like 2 parts. Like so they had one over here, and it was literally 4 targets. You had 2 here, 2 here. You had to shoot them in sequential order, so it's like 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4, or vice versa. And so it's a draw, bang, 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 bang. Like, there's a mandatory reload between, but it should be like a 5-second stage. Turned into a 15-second stage for me because just bang, rack, bang, rack, bang, rack.
So you used our bolt grease,
Yeah.
which is essentially lithium grease, I would
Yeah,
probably say.
it's a little thicker, but I had used it basically this whole time without any issues. But it was cold that morning, and it kind of gummed it up, and it just would not work at
What
all.
do you put on yours, Blake?
So SV comes with a grease-infused blue lube. They call it their blue lube. I use that on pretty much everything, but they recommend Lucas Oil Red and Tacky for barrel lugs, and on warmer months, maybe on the side of the barrel. Yeah. I use the grease also on components that have a lot of friction, i.e. sear, disconnect, stuff like that, because they're not moving a whole lot. But that also makes it stay in place compared to oil. Oil eventually will move.
Yeah.
Grease usually stays there.
All right, very good.
But that match didn't work out too great in my favor because of that. And so it's just kind of one of those lessons learned, just I guess as a new shooter, just going through the ranks, and
It happens.
I fixed it, and unfortunately I don't get to try it out now. I mean, in practice I can, but I don't get like the redemption of.
Yeah, no.
Well, win or learn, right?
Yeah,
Win or learn.
There
That's
you go.
right.
There you go.
That's what I told him.
As long as you never do it again, it's all right.
Well,
Well, as long as you fix it, yeah.
Yeah, as long as we learned. That's the key part. You got to learn. You can't just go, oh, there's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Don't
know what the
change
problem is,
anything.
but I'm not gonna do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what you do.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
But I also shoot little carry optics with a SIG 320, and that gun, kind of like a Glock. You know, I pull the gun apart, wipe it down,
Yeah.
put just maybe a little bit of Lucas CLP, I think is what it is, just in the trigger components. Give it a wipe down, brush down, call it happy.
I had a guy tell me one day, he's an instructor, but it's very like combat oriented,
Mhm.
and he's like, man, the easiest thing is just let the gun clean itself. He's like, you just pour some oil down there and let it blow it all into the receiver. He's like, there you go, it's clean.
But I was going to mention one of the things that I do. You know, you talked about the lighter fluid. Two things I keep on my bench when I clean. I keep a spray bottle of isopropyl alcohol
Mm-hmm.
because that cuts grease, cuts water.
And
It evaporates, doesn't leave any residuals.
You're talking about like 70%.
I buy it at Sam's, 90% is what I use.
90.
But anything, the higher the better,
Yeah.
just because then there's more to evaporate off to leave less residual, because I'm assuming it's probably cut with water or something. But
Yeah.
Right.
I use that for a lot of stuff. Wiping the gun down when you get done, because you know you get a little bit of grease on the outside of the gun, so it's good to wipe the gun down. Kills coat. Sorry. It's just good. It's just a good multi-purpose. I keep one in my range bag also, because I can spray my hands down with it. And if my hands get a little sweaty, it kind of cuts the sweat off. They get a little sweaty. They get a little bit of oil. You cut that oil and that sweat off of your hands real well. In
Mhm.
addition to if you use any lube any grip enhancement.
Right.
And then I also keep either a contact cleaner or brake cleaner, which is really good for
Mhm.
flushing out
Anything.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything. You know, when you pull a 2011 apart and you pull the trigger off and the sear and all the good stuff out, there's just parts in there you just can't get to with hardly anything.
Yeah,
Bit of
it would have to be a spray, and probably even with a nozzle.
Yeah, you always keep the little red tip
a lot
on
of
it.
those, yeah, just to reach down in there, because nothing else is going to be small enough. But yeah, so you've got a clean gun. Now what do you do with it? So what's the next part in your training?
As far as for the gun cleaning, you mean, or
No, like
okay.
just in the shooting.
Oh.
So we went over like stage 1, stage 2 of like if I'm a new shooter and I come to you, obviously I have to have a clean, functional gun.
that helps.
So this would help me attain that. But now to use that as a tool, what would I work on? And so we've gone over, you know, kind of the key things, sort of starting from the ground up. You've got your movement aspect and then your shooting aspect, which, you know, ties into a hit factor,
Correct.
essentially. So that's something to work on. But from there, do I just reiterate a lot of those? I mean, you know, obviously some of them are, because you're always going to have your fundamentals that will never, you know, you're never going to go away. Doesn't matter if you're the best shooter in the world, you're still doing step A, B, and C that
Well,
you learned the first day of having a gun.
The core,
Yep.
the stance, the draw, the grip, the trigger press. You do those no matter what we're doing, whether we're working on movement, whether we're working on static, whether we're working on practicing some weird thing that they have set up at a stage coming up. We're always doing those 4 things. Doesn't matter what else is happening. Beyond that, I always video myself, and for the first 30 or 40 views on that video, I watch it for entertainment value.
Yeah.
And then at some point I go, so that was fun. But now
with a critical eye.
And I had a guy tell me one time, watch him with the sound off.
Yeah.
And then you can actually kind of pay attention to what you're doing. And that's always a good thing. So like we talked about last time, whenever I shoot a match, win or learn, I hate to beat that up, but win or learn. So what did I do well? What did I do wrong? If I had a stage reloads, I know for me personally, you're supposed to reload up here in your face where you can see the mag well and you can kind of see the process of reloading. And then you also, eyes are up so they get back on targets quicker. I know I tend to belly reload. I cock everything down like this, and I'm loading way down here. And it usually works out pretty well, but that's something I always try to work on.
Something to improve on.
Try to.
And even if you don't have like an obvious mistake or something that just sticks out,
there's always something.
There's something that you can improve on.
Even if it didn't necessarily hurt, like you said, hurt you on the stage per se, it's always something. You're like, okay, I know for a fact I did. I know when I shoot on the move, and this is something I've really been working on lately, I stand up fairly vertical. And I know the lower your body gets, the more stable you are, the quicker you move, and the better you shoot during the movement process. And so that's something I've been working on a lot lately.
And that fits into, part of the core is your base or your stance, something like that.
Absolutely.
And that's what you were working with me, that first day that I trained with you, is like we would call it an athletic stance.
Yes.
Because it doesn't really matter what you're doing, if it's football or baseball, soccer or whatever. Boxing. You have this like key stance that every single coach for every sport is gonna make you do.
Yeah. They used to always do that in baseball. They'd walk up and push
you,
on you, and if they push you and knock you over,
you're not low enough.
You're not.
If I remember correctly, I believe I did that to Joseph.
Yep. And it's easy to see, but if you don't have something sticking out in your mind, or if you're looking back through your whole match and you're like, well, that was a pretty good match for me. Let's see what I can improve on, whether that's your speed or your hits or whatever.
So my daughter, she decided she didn't want to take up competitive shooting, but she wants to become more familiar with guns and less afraid of them and more comfortable with the recoil. So she came out a couple of days ago, and we were working together, and we went through the whole first little, so your stance is like this. And we talked about this, and we talked about that, and then we went back to, I said, okay, so go ahead and make the gun ready. So she did, and she racked it, and she set it down or whatever we were doing. And I said, okay, go ahead and shoot that target 2 times. And immediately her stance went to some weird foot forward, foot back. You just revert.
You revert, yeah.
And it's one of those things that the more you practice it, the core things especially, because everything's the foundation. Everything builds from that core, those 4 core processes. The more you work on them and the more you beat them into your head, the more
that becomes what you revert to.
Yeah.
Like, so as a
like you said, muscle memory.
Yeah. As a new shooter, the way I'm going to shoot is like this. But
I see a lot of people that'll cock their shoulders way back.
Yeah.
They'll stand like this, way backward. I don't know why they do that, but I guess.
So, you can, if that's what you're working on, then obviously you're going to try very methodically to fix that. But you throw them into a stage, and that's the first thing they do. That goes out the window.
Or just as simple as starting outside the box and stepping into the box.
Changing anything,
Okay.
you'll revert. And so you work that until that's now your baseline. Like, if anything's going to change, it's going to change back to what you're supposed to be doing instead of what you're just naturally doing.
Yeah.
And that just takes over and over. Just
it takes rounds. It takes rounds
drilling
down
it
range.
into your brain.
So, Blake, what is the typical proper stance going to look like?
So for me, my proper stance is if you put your feet side by side and you've got the curvature of the ball of your foot and then that little curve in your heel. My stance, my feet go just inside of each other. That's about how far back I want my strong foot. And then my strong foot, I take just a slightly wider than shoulder width. I'm a little bit top heavy, so that gives me a little bit broader stance so that I can explode left, right, forward, backward, wherever I need to go. That also gives me as good of solid of platform as I can ask for. So that's my stance. foot back just about a half of my foot, and just slightly wider than shoulder width.
And
Okay.
your strong foot is whatever side your dominant hand
Correct.
is. It's just like boxing or throwing a baseball, whatever.
Right.
A lot of this is athletically universal.
Yep.
Because it's kind of natural for everybody, unless you have some weird thing where you're like cross-eye dominant or something.
Yeah, and that changes the game a lot.
Yeah.
But like I tell people, I said, it's got to be comfortable. So one of my guys, the Metroplex, he's a golfer, so that's a very upright stance. So for him, his stance is a little bit more narrow than I like, but for him it works
But
pretty
he can
well.
work with that.
But he can work with it, yeah. So it's got to be comfortable for you. But that's the base. That's the starting point, at least, is that stance.
So knees bent slightly.
Knees bent slightly. If you're not used to bending your knees, exaggerate them to make sure you start, again, muscle memorying that and building that into your subconscious. Upright and vertical, get your head up, get your chin up. You don't want to be hunkered down. You want to be as upright and vertical. You tend to get a whole lot better movement. For me, generally speaking, we start hands below wrist. I think hands below belt is, I think, what the new official definition is. The fat part of my palm, I want to be touching the front part of my optic, and the other hand just slightly cocked in front of it, and I try to be in that position.
And that's that's what I do, because you'll watch guys, they're getting ready before they're actually ready, like timer's about to go off.
Ready.
They'll, go through their draw and their mag grab or, working a reload. And then there's like a 2-second deal where they go, bam.
Yep.
And that's like go time.
Yep.
Like,
Right.
Because that's what I do. My hand. So the hand go here. I've got a checklist I do, but I always want that support hand to snap up, ready to accept that pistol. And so that'll be like my last position, and then that goes down, that touches the side of my pistol, and my hand kind of goes down that little comfortable position there, and then I'm ready.
And you do that every time.
Yep.
Hopefully.
His is easy because he.
But I can tell you for a
this.
fact that if I don't do, I've got a checklist. So right before the buzzer goes beep, I do my little thing, I make ready, whatever you're supposed to do, and the hands go down. I get my chin up. That's what he said. I'll catch myself. If I don't do that, my head goes down, and then I get a very compressed look at everything because you kind of do this, and that's not what you want. You want that head up as high as you can so you've got as much peripheral as you can. I also get a lot better draw. If my chin is up, if it's my dead's down, I tend to get my gun up, and I get a bad dot picture. So I think about 3 things as my checklist. And this is literally right before they say stand by, or maybe in the process of saying stand by. It's right before I draw the gun. Chin up, think about snapping that support hand over, because again, I know what's one of my weak points is if I don't think about snapping that hand over, my support hand kind of waving around over here while this hand's getting on the gun and starting to do its job, and then this hand's behind the curve. And then I think about relaxing. Those 3 things, because if you're tense, you just can't.
Something's gonna fumble.
You can't move quickly if you're tense.
Okay. All right. Very good. Good things for us to all to work on.
And so we have our core, and it's never gonna change.
Never gonna change.
you can add things here and there that are gonna compound into that, but your 1, 2, and 3s are never gonna change.
That's
like new shooters are gonna work on this.
Yep.
Experienced shooters are gonna work on this. Pros are gonna work on this.
Yep.
Everybody's gonna do it.
Yep.
And you're not gonna be successful unless you work on these things.
Yep.
Or you're not gonna be efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to work on that, is there something that we can take that we so I'm a new shooter and I say, hey, I want to get better at the core fundamentals of pistol shooting. What would you tell me to do? I mean,
that's open-ended.
Without having to be like,
give me a drill,
super broad and saying, well, you need to work on your stance and your footwork and your draw and your grip and your side alignment.
So the simplest thing on that would be, first of all, get your stance programmed in. That's the first thing. Get your hands programmed in where they're going, where they need to go on that buzzer. And then just beat that process to pieces.
Yeah.
You can do that in dry fire pretty effectively. There's some things you cannot do in dry fire. That's something you can do in dry fire effectively. And then set up a drill. i.e., we talked about a little bit earlier in the start of this, the core 4 or 4 for core. What do we call it? Core for 4?
4 for core.
4 for core. 4 for core. Simple drill. Multiple things going on within this drill, but it's a good, solid, measurable drill. Cheap and easy to set up and cheap to shoot a few times because it's only 4 rounds. And then you have metrics to measure by. So you've got a very close target, 4 yards up, 4 yards offset to the left. Second target, 10 yards up, 4 yards offset to the right. Facing straight down range, hands relaxed at sides. Now you have the core to work on.
Plus 20 other things.
Plus about 20 other things.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the thing is if you do these things, so proper stance, knees bent, hands at an index point so that you know if you have the choice, your hands are always in that exact same point every time. Now, a lot of times we start up here, wherever we start. You don't have that choice. But when you have that choice, hands always at the exact same position. So now you got a measure of your first shot. 4 yards up, 4 yards over, it should be fairly quick. But whatever the time is, at least you have a measurement of it.
Yeah.
Now you have a measurement of a cadence because we have a close target. So that cadence on that close target should be fairly quick. Then we have a transition, driving the gun from first target to the second target. About 8-yard swing, going to a further target. We have a measure of the time from that target to this target. And then we have a measure of follow-up 2 shots on a further harder target.
And this is all something that you can track with one thing, with just a timer.
Put a note. Put a note on your phone.
Okay. So we're going to do this 4 for core.
4 for core.
We'll have Joseph will get the drawing up on our YouTube channel down underneath this. So that's Straight Shooting with Dan and Joseph on YouTube. Search for that. We'll have that down on the bottom. He'll put that up. Should be up there. Blake's going to do a video of himself doing it, and then we'll do a video of us doing it. But basically, 4 yards out and then 4 yards to the left, we're going to have a target. 10 yards out, 4 yards to the right, we're going to have a target. You're going to draw, double tap the left target.
Shoot twice. 2 controlled pair.
Yeah.
Double tap indicates 1 unaimed shot.
Okay. All right. So we're going to draw, shoot 2 shots on the left target and then 2 shots on the right target.
And so we have
within that you have a draw, initial sight picture, trigger press, watching your dot, watching both those shots like we were talking about last time.
Or lining up those silly bumpy things if you shoot iron sights.
And then you have a transition. Which is a movement between target A and target B. And then you have, at a further distance, 2 more shots with all of that wrapped in together. And so, like, I can already tell you the obvious difference between his video and my video is going to be on his, if you're just listening to it, it's going to sound like he's shooting at the same target. It's going to be bang, 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 bang. Well, I mean, it'll be closer than mine will be.
My transition will probably be 0.4, 0.5, rough numbers.
So what do you think this is going to look like, and what should we be working? I mean, obviously we did all that. Closer target should have a shorter split between your 2 shots.
Correct. So there's 3 big, other than the core. Again, the core we do all the time, no matter what we're doing. So the 3 big things on this are cadence, or whatever you want to call that. The amount of time it takes to shoot 2 rounds onto the close target versus 2 rounds onto the further target.
Which in his class, this would be under the flash, flood, and focus.
Flash, floating, focus.
Yeah.
There's a lot of words. So when you've taken enough classes from the big boys, while they may use different verbs, one of the things that they always talk about, the different verbiage, is how much time does it take to shoot a given target. So a 4-yard target for me is probably going to be pretty quick. I was shooting one yesterday at 6 yards. It was 2 rounds. My total time was about 118, 120 from draw, 2 rounds. So first shot about a second shot about 20 split. Further target, so that's a 20 split on a 4-yard target. Further target should be 25, 26, 28. So you should, the purpose of this drill is so that you're not shooting these at the same time. If you're shooting these 2 targets within the same time frame, you're either shooting one too slow, which means you're leaving time on the table, or you're shooting the other target too fast, which means you're probably shooting above your skill set, which means you're probably dropping points or throwing mics.
Okay.
Then we also have a transition, which is proper stance, knees bent, so you can drive that gun from target 1 to target 2 as quickly as you can.
And that's something. So the first class that I did with him, my transitions, it was like a rainbow effect instead of just here. It was kind of like a wave. And so that's something that I've really worked on. And I think I've corrected it now, but like we were talking about earlier, if I'm in the middle of a stage and I get kind of flustered or I see something that I really want to go after, that's the first thing I'll do is I'll swing that pistol over.
We revert.
Yep.
That's right.
And
okay, so as we do this, we're going to keep track of our hits.
Yep.
Our split.
well, just
Really, the big thing is
the meat and potatoes of it would be
total time.
your total
Total time.
time,
Total
and
time.
then your splits.
because I mean everything else is kind of relative. I mean, if
Yeah.
you shoot this and the total time is 5 seconds, we have a little bit of improvement to work on.
Those are the first two numbers I would look at. Is your total time,
your splits, and then your hits, because we also,
Yeah.
we obviously want alphas.
Correct.
Obviously want alphas.
and if you just smoke this down on your first try, then you can look at, or if you do it 100 times and you really improve since the first time you shot it, then you can look at your time to first shot or your first split for those two shots. Because mine, like, if it's a close target, I can shoot freaking fast.
If Joseph and I set up on this exact same target, we'll say we did a low ready, he's probably going to beat me in time because I just can't make myself pull the trigger fast like I know a lot of my guys that I shoot against can.
Yeah.
So my split on that, a good split for me is 0.18. That's a pretty
and mine's
typical.
like 0.13.
Exactly.
I can't tell you that I'm going to hit anything, but I'm going to shoot at it fast.
You're going to miss fast, man. And that's the way I am. So, but as we talked about last episode,
Yeah.
dropping points, or,
Yeah.
or the episode
It
before
is-
last.
it's points divided by time.
That's right. So we got to hit those on the alphas. Okay. All right. So go online, set that up, watch it. We're going to have the drawing on there so that you can set this stage up. We're going to do that and start practicing that and go over our times with that. We challenge you to do that as well. Work on these. Remember those core fundamentals. And this is 4 for core, and to work on those, and we'll compare times and see and track. Get you a little journal each time you go out. This will be one thing you do.
Let's say
Okay.
let's run it 3 times and get
Okay.
a total time for all 3 runs.
3 times total time for all 3 runs.
So if I run it, it's probably whatever it's going to be, and then your total time added all 3 times up together.
Right.
Yeah.
And this will be something I think that you can put in there, because even Michael Jordan worked on layups when he go out and practice. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a fundamental thing
I
that
bet you
got to do.
can't count the number of free throws those guys shoot.
Exactly.
You know.
And this will be something, so I'll just add this, because right now, my kind of training thing, it looks like 75% dry fire, which is just in my living room, which, I mean, I'm still working on draw, side alignment, time to first shot, stuff like that. But there's things you just can't work, which is like your split times, because obviously the gun's not going off, your trigger's not resetting, you can't work on your splits. What you can work on is your time to first shot and your draw time. But outside of that on the range, one drill that I just love is the 20 alpha, and because that works 100 things. But I'll add this in there too, because for one, it's a lower round count, so it's cheaper to shoot, because 20 alpha drill is 20 rounds. And if you do that 3 times, you're getting up there.
And this is no different than an array you'd have in a stage.
Yeah.
Whether you're coming into a port, whether you're around a barricade on one side, left side, it doesn't matter. This is pretty relative. You're generally not going to shoot 5 rounds on a target.
Right.
As good as the 20 alpha drill is, we shoot 2 rounds as a rule of thumb.
But I think the reason that I like it so much is because
It's fun.
I get in the mindset that I'm only ever going to shoot at a target twice. And so because they did this in Austin, they threw one in that was 3 rounds. And after those 2, I have to force my finger back to that third shot.
Yeah.
Because you just get used to bop, 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 bop.
Yeah.
Yep.
That third shot, and there was even one that was 6 shots. And I can't tell you how many guys it was like they would either just forget and they would just do 2 and 2, and the rest of the stage is just out the door because they get a procedural or whatever.
I've had a few stages we've shot that have been 1 round per target.
Yeah.
And that's tough too.
Yep.
So that's why I like the 20 alpha, because it
Okay.
it makes you change your shot count, like to where you're not just doing 2 on.
Well, like we
everything.
talked about last night, makes you aware. It makes you think.
Yes.
If you just go out there blindly and just do the exact same thing repetitively,
Yeah.
Okay.
may get good at that thing, but there's other parts to the
That's
equation.
right.
But
All right. So 4 for Core. Go to our YouTube channel there, Straight Shooting with Dan and Joseph. Look at that. We challenge you to do it. Put your times up there for running it 3 times through. We're going to have ours on. We're going to have Blake back in a month. He'll come back. We'll have another drill that we'll go over, some more tips and tricks. Probably we'll have some questions over our 4 for Core. Blake can help us along with that. I'm sure after watching that, he'll have some critiques he can give us on how we can improve that. But Blake, from 415 Training, we appreciate you coming out again today.
Pleasure.
Always a pleasure and a bunch of good information there. All right, well, that wraps it up for our 5th episode. We appreciate everybody to tune in. Be sure and tune in 2 more weeks. We'll have episode 6 out. Next time, we're going to have Jim Cannon come on and talk with us. I'm sure if you've been on Instagram or anything, Jim Cannon's got a huge following on there.
he's pretty popular.
Big NRL 22 guy out in Utah. He's going to call in, and we're going to talk about some NRL 22, how we get started in that, base class, open class, what that kind of game looks like, and then we will be going over some more bleeding off with Joseph on some USPSA stuff. I'm sure we'll be talking about our 4 for Core and our times on
It's
that.
gonna be a lot of practice.
That's
maybe,
right.
maybe we'll have some matches to talk about by then.
Yes, hopefully
Maybe,
so.
yeah.
Hopefully so. All right. We appreciate you tuning in. Be sure and go online and tune into our YouTube channel. Be sure and subscribe to our podcast. Give us a like on there. Any comments is greatly appreciated. Instagram, Joseph is PS Photog, and I am Shooting Accuracy. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.